All right, Common Sense, Ohio. It is December 6, 2024, the day before the day that will live in infamy, the day before the day at dawn we slept. Why am I saying that? Because, we like to have like the sort of the factoid of the day, the history of the day, or this day in history. And so we're going to cover a couple of quick stories today. We don't have time for a full episode, but still it's going to be a chocked full of good stuff episode. I am going to do a this day in history on December 6, 2024. Not only was it the day before the day that lived in infamy, it was also the day that there was a giant repeat of Woodstock that went afoul at Altamont. The Rolling Stones played famously along with a bunch of others, hired inexplicably the Hells Angels to conduct security that after all sorts of problems, everything went horribly bad, resulting in the stabbing death of I think at least one, maybe two of their patrons or of the attendees, and sort of ended the flower power era. It's like, look, the chaos wasn't so great after all. The free love wasn't so free after all. There had to be some boundaries. So an interesting sort of transition into where we are today.
All right. Amazing.
Amazing.
So we got some news with Norm. Let's start with the Ohio. There's one big story coming out of Ohio. Norm's been chomping at the bit. He can't get it into the microphone fast enough.
Well, Congressman Brad Wenstrup, who is retiring, he did not run for re-election from the Cincinnati area, was chairman of the special committee looking into the entire COVID free speech suppression, COVID as a disease, and how the NIH and the CDC handled it, and also looking into the veracity of these various officials in their testimony before his committee. Fauci, Francis, whatever his name is, from the NIH, all these various officials that came up and basically lied to his committee, and are doing a big CYA. And now Joe Biden, there's talk that Joe Biden is going to do prescriptive pardons for Fauci and Francis Collins and some of these other people because, gee whiz, maybe the Justice Department will actually look into their lying.
Well, and what's so frustrating about this?
I mean,
this is the problem. It just felt like we were living in Animal Farm or like it was like Pravda or something.
For sure.
We all knew this was BS.
Bull.
Like,
yeah.
It's like after the first week when they said the bodies were going to start stacking up because it was like what's the zombie show? Like the Walking Dead or something. We're just going to start stacking up bodies. And it didn't happen. It's like, you start to think, wait a minute.
Well, and here locally they'd set up what was the convention center to handle all the influx of that winter, and it gets, if it gets in your head, it scares the shit out of you.
They brought in a
huge
hospital ship to New York City.
Yeah.
Right.
And
a whole ship was turned in.
And remember like the little clip they showed of like what was going on in France or Italy rather of like this horrible scenario in hospitals, like this awful thing, people dying. And it's like it was all bullshit.
It was all bullshit.
And you have to ask why.
Yeah.
Why was it all bullshit? And now you have to ask why then, rhetorically anyway, would they want to pardon these people if they didn't do anything wrong?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they came out, and Congressman Wenstrup, who is a doctor, by the way, himself, they've issued this 520-page report that essentially says that Marty McCary and Scott Atlas and all these other critics of the COVID policies, they were almost 100% right about everything.
Yeah, and also understand, like we talk about Common Sense Ohio, and so goes Ohio, so goes the country, and so goes the world. Might be a little bit of an exaggeration. But DeWine was sort of a test case, as I understand it, for some of these COVID restrictions. They figured, look, he's sort of this middle-of-the-road Republican guy, Republican guy, and he would go along with this. And he did.
He did.
And we shut down and we went through all this. And I'll never forget. I've talked about it and I'll talk about it until the day I die, probably. His speech where it's like he says, we've done it before. We can do it again. And I threw my phone at the radio saying, no, you didn't do anything, you MFer.
Right.
You just shut us down and we had to do everything. We had to forego our incomes. We had to forego our jobs. I had to lose 4 or 5 employees upstairs and never be able to bring them back.
Right.
Like you did that to us.
And there was so much fraud, and this is covered in the report. I mean, the estimates are something around 25% of the PPP money and all these other programs were just, they were just like people were just getting.
People who didn't need it cashed in.
Well, and again, if we need to look at this report and learn lessons. You just can't dole out money that fast without any kind of restraints and monitoring of it.
100% right.
Stop that.
And you can't. We all, as citizens, should learn this lesson.
Right.
And I knew it intuitively, maybe because I'm a Gen Xer, we're a little bit older. But like whenever somebody says the sky is falling, therefore give me all the power to do whatever I need to do.
Right.
You might be a little skeptical about that.
Yes.
Right? Might want to think a little bit about that.
What the government did, essentially, in my opinion, this is how I look at it. Instead of making us suffer and not doing PPP, like just, hey, you have to close your business and you just lose out on a year's income, there would have been riots in the streets. People would have rebelled against that kind of policy. And none of this would have happened. So the government bought off the middle class. Yeah. They bought us off
with our own money.
With our own money. What they said is, hey, essential workers, people at Walmart, essential workers, truck drivers, you can still work. McDonald's, you can still work. But everybody else, we're going to buy you off. You can lay on the sofa. We're going to mail you checks. If you're smart enough to qualify and figure it all out, you had to have a friend at a bank to guide you through this,
for sure, or
get an attorney, because it was complex and it was kind of first come, first served, and it was unfair.
And I have seen the ramifications of this, the indictments, and guess what? All the people that stole all the PPP money, you're not getting it back. They spent it. It's gone. So we are all still bearing the brunt of this. So you can prosecute whoever you want and go ahead, do it. I'm sure that's what's appropriate. But it's not like the money's coming back to us. It is gone. It is burned. We gave it away unnecessarily. We took people's livelihoods unnecessarily.
Right.
All in the name of this perceived emergency that was all bunk.
So the report does recommend that the Department of Justice look into charging people. It doesn't say which people, but I'll just give you 3 quick examples of Fauci. Fauci lied, first of all, about us not funding this gain-of-function research. Mm-hmm. In fact, there was U.S. money going to communist China to the lab, and it had dual-purpose possibilities as weapon and as pure academic research. Right. So that's scandal 1. Scandal 2, Fauci admitted before the committee that he knew the mask requirement was bullshit, but he did it in order to try to assert discipline over the American people. So he knew, because the WHO had done airborne viral research into masks, historically, and they actually had a standing protocol that masks would not stop an airborne viral infection. And Fauci at first said, no, masks won't work. And then he figured a way to scare us into submission for all the other policies is to force us all to wear the masks. So number 2. And then Fauci also has done this reversal that, I never said that a lab leak, wasn't a possibility. And I never said to close the schools. That's total bullshit.
Total crap.
Total crap.
But I think you need to take Fauci off the table because he will be pardoned.
I think he will.
Oh, he will be. Yeah, but as a preemptive strike, he'll be pardoned.
This is a good segue into Hunter Biden's pardon. And this is even the Democrats are up in arms about this one. I mean,
yes.
Because it doesn't surprise me in the least. I don't think it surprises any of us here at the table. I mean, we all talked about this. He's going to pardon his son. Why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm not even that offended by it because you knew it was going to happen.
He's a serial liar, President Biden. He lies all the time.
It shows the way he did it. It's not just pardon him for the crimes that have been exposed already.
Yeah.
It's pardoning him for every other crime that he might have committed. So like this exposes a deep understanding of
what he knows right now.
What he knows, of all the possible things that could come up. Now, I'm not so sure. I haven't done the research to know whether you can pardon
prospectively,
well,
right?
No. That's retrospectively, but you're pardoning stuff.
I mean, for future indictments that
you're
haven't even
pardoning
happened.
Stuff that hasn't been discovered.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah,
so look, the implication is if you're pardoning stuff that hasn't been discovered, how can you pardon it?
Yeah.
Unless you know that there's stuff to be discovered, right? So that it's a very interesting scenario, not to mention the fact that he just got in front of you, American people, and lied through his freaking teeth because he knew. And then I think it's coming out that he had every intent of pardoning. And then these other pardons you're talking about, I understand Biden hasn't even been part of these conversations. It's like his people talking about who they're going to have Biden pardon. Who is this guy? Is he a president?
He's falling asleep in Africa right now.
Is he, he's in Africa, and his people are here talking about who they want him to pardon. Like, isn't it his signature that's going on? It just shows you how absurd this whole thing has been.
And then the media, rah. Did you see where Esquire magazine a couple days ago ran a story that this is not unique, that President George Herbert Walker Bush pardoned his son Neil for crimes, which is factually untrue. He never pardoned his son Neil. And they had to take an entire story off of their website, written by one of the reporters don't even know what facts are.
First of all, the president can't pardon state crimes.
It's unbelievable.
Look, it's got to be a pardon of a federal. Like it can't be some local state thing. But look, be careful what you do, Mr. Biden, because I will say this: I have represented folks charged with crimes throughout my career. That's all pretty much I've ever done. And one of the great protections that our founding fathers put indelibly into our Bill of Rights was the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. So heretofore, Hunter Biden has been able to stand in front of Congress, stand in front of a court, stand in front of whoever's asking and say, I don't want to answer that on the grounds that my responses may tend to incriminate me. Or on the vice of counsel, I'm not going to. So as soon as you're pardoned, as soon as you cannot be convicted or charged with any crimes, now you don't have immunity, or now you have immunity and you don't have a privilege against self-incrimination. They can put this guy on the witness stand and start asking him questions. Now, is he going to lie? Of course he's going to lie, but he can't be pardoned for that's a future crime. So as soon as he purges himself on the witness stand, now he can subject himself to prosecution for that perjury. I don't think Biden has prospectively pardoned him for everything he might do. I think it's all the stuff that's happened. So say in 2 months, there's an investigation. They put Hunter Biden on the witness stand in a grand jury investigating maybe like his father. And they say, tell us what was going on with the China money or the Ukrainian money. Who's the big guy?
Yeah.
He doesn't get to say, I refuse to answer now. And they'll throw his ass in jail and hold him in contempt until he does answer. Or he'll lie and that'll get exposed. And then somebody can charge him with perjury. So be careful what you've done.
Steve, you raise an excellent point, as you always do. So I'm thinking of President Ford's prospective pardon of President Nixon. So and it was never tested. So actually, this would be a case of first impression for the Supreme Court because they didn't really go after Nixon after Ford pardoned him. Can a president block future crimes? Like if Nixon had been brought in, testified, perjured himself, would Ford's pardon have covered that?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. That's a very interesting question.
And the Ford pardon of Nixon was a little bit different, right? That was I don't want to call it political as much as social political. It was time for the country to heal, I think.
Well, we were sick of Watergate.
Exactly.
And it was just like, let's lay this thing to rest. We're not going to prosecute our former president. Everybody knows he's a fallen whatever at that point. So let's just move on.
And Ford lost the election because of that. And Jimmy Carter became president because people did not like that Ford pardoned Nixon.
Right. But he did. Also, the country did not fall back and go after Nixon and conduct any additional investigations. It had already been sort of unearthed.
That's right.
The Hunter Biden scenario has been a cover-up from the beginning. It has never been unearthed.
Right.
And whenever that's the case, sort of like our guest recently, Mark Patinkin, a journalist. Journalists are going to be journalists. Somebody is going to see dollar signs and say, now it's time to go after this. Let's start digging.
If they understand the scenario you just played out.
This is simple stuff.
If they can. A lot of journalists can't.
This is simple stuff. I mean, as far as like anybody who does what I do will know that Hunter Biden now has immunity and you can put his ass on a witness stand and start grilling him. I mean, it's like.
And he can't take the fifth.
He can't take the fifth. He can only lie.
Yeah, or tell the truth.
He can lie, tell the truth, refuse to talk, in which case he'd be sent to jail on contempt.
For contempt.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
and lying to Congress, perjury, those are crimes that haven't happened yet.
So let's be very clear. I don't give a rat's rectum about Hunter's gun case, although as a gun owner, I think it's pretty shitty because I would be going to prison if I lied on that form, or at least I'd be fined and have my rights taken away as a convicted felon for lying on that form. But I don't care about that. I don't care about his drugs. I don't care about the prostitution and all that as much as I care about the big stuff, which I think Joe, by pardoning his son, is trying to prevent this political influence, peddling that they did in China, Ukraine, Russia, etc. That in China, that's where I think we are really. That's where the story is.
And it's because here's where the outrage is.
Because that's a real crime. That's treason.
Here's where the outrage is. The outrage is not that it's exactly what you're talking about, Norm. The outrage is not that the president pardoned his son for crimes. All right. Is it?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Right. Whatever.
He for say it was just tax evasion because Hunter didn't file his tax returns on an unrelated business.
Yeah.
What cuts to the core of this is that it looks like it's part of the bigger cover-up.
That's right.
So Biden's protecting himself.
He's protecting himself by protecting his son.
And I hope, if that's what you're doing, Mr. Biden, I hope this backfires and goes right up your backside, because some tenacious investigator is going to start an investigation.
Yeah.
And put Hunter on the witness stand. I also wonder, and I don't know the answer, whether some state court prosecutor can get a hold of this mess and prosecute it in state court. Possible.
Good point. Like Fonnie Willis and Alvin Bragg.
I was just going to say, it's not like there's not precedent for that now, right? Right. So, all right, let's move on. We got to buzz through this quickly.
Daniel Penny.
We'll talk about Penny next. Jury is deliberating. There were two questions, I think at least two questions. This is the self-defense subway trial. One of them was the jury, shortly after beginning deliberations, after closing arguments, they wanted to see and review the trial court's instructions on what are the elements of self-defense or things like that. So those who don't know, jury instructions sort of are, that's the law for the case, even if you don't agree with what they are. And we experienced this in Trump's trial in New York.
Yeah.
It is the law for the case. So it gives the guidelines for the jury to evaluate whether Penny acted in self-defense. And generally that is he didn't start the fight. He didn't go too far. He had a good reason to do what he was doing. And he acted in self-defense and or defense of other people. And that's going to be spelled out. So that would be a typical question I would expect as having sweated through plenty of verdicts or deliberations and verdicts. It surprised me a little bit they didn't have it already in writing. Most of the cases I try now, the judge actually gives the jury written jury instructions to follow along, and they would have that sort of as the manual in the deliberation room. But not every judge does that. So that's a question I would expect. The other thing they wanted to see, the jury wanted to see the testimony, I believe, of one of the state's experts on cause of death. And this is a more nuanced question. So look, and specifically he testified, I believe, that if no matter how much what was it, fentanyl or whatever was in his system, the cause of death was still a result of Penny. That was his testimony. He wouldn't have died from the other stuff. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know the medical testimony to be true or not true, but the jury wanted to see it. And once what they're really the root of that, and look, this is a horrible habit of defense lawyers or prosecutors, any trial lawyers, trying to predict the outcome of a trial based on a jury's question. Like, good luck with that. But we all do it.
It's kabuki theater.
Right, we all do it. We all do it. So now you're starting to think, well, are they really or why are they concerned at all about what caused the death? Because if it's self-defense, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. He acted in self-defense, whether he caused a death or not.
Yeah.
It shouldn't matter if they're buying into Penny's defense.
Yeah.
There's ways to look at it the other way.
And
too.
he had his medical expert, countermand that testimony.
I'm sure. Right. Yeah. So, and what
he said, it was sickle cell anemia combined with fentanyl,
right?
Combined with lower air capacity.
That's right. So it could be a good thing for Penny that they might be just saying, look, he didn't cause the death of another by virtue of what he did, and that sort of negates the murder on a different level than self-defense. So there's always, like I said, kabuki theater. You can go through this and speculate until the cows come home. Yeah. Sooner or later, the cows will come home. So predictions.
I predict that he is going to be found not guilty.
I'm going to predict the same thing. That's my hope, at least.
I hope he's found not guilty. I think he's going to be found not guilty. A hung jury wouldn't surprise me.
So Steve, let me bring up a couple of the prosecution witnesses, which I think ended up in a strange way being more helpful to the defense. So they brought in his Marine Corps instructor who taught him how to do hand-to-hand combat and do a choke. And I think they call it a right angle choke that he performed on the victim, on the perpetrator who.
Yeah, we've got a resident.
What's it called again?
Rear naked choke. A rear naked choke.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Marine Corps instructor, thank you, Dan. The Marine Corps instructor also said in his testimony that they are taught, the Marines are taught in this combat maneuver, that they are to continue the choke until the point of the choke is to put the person into unconsciousness. He said the choke will have no benefit if you stop midway and the guy springs back into action. The whole point of the Marines teaching the choke is to actually make the guy go unconscious. Not necessarily to kill him, but to put him out.
Yeah, so there's going to be some debate about this. I mean, I know our resident jiu-jitsu expert has talked about this, and the choke he employed was not the kind of choke that would typically, or it wasn't done correctly anyway to actually choke somebody out. And I know you can choke people out pretty quickly and they live, right? I mean, that's fine. But there's other chokes you can do that kill them, that actually cut off the airflow and kill them, as opposed to the blood flow to the brain that knocks them out.
Yeah.
And I don't know what he did here. I don't know enough about the self-defense maneuvers here. The question I would always ask as the defense lawyer is, did Penny act reasonably under the circumstances to subdue the threat?
Yeah.
And this is why they're calling this expert, because he's saying, well, look, this is what he was trained to do. And he might have been trained incorrectly. Fair enough. Because did Penny subjectively feel like he did what he needed to do, and did he objectively act reasonably? That's what the jury's going to be grappling with. I think it changes the nuanced factual dynamic if Penny employed a choke that is designed to cut off the airway as opposed to the blood flow to the brain. And if the experts are saying he cut off the airway, well, look, that's designed to kill. If you're just cutting off the blood flow to the brain, that's designed to just let somebody pass out. Now, as I understand it, the deceased here was in that chokehold for a good chunk of time, and even after he had stopped moving, Penny maintained the choke. Now, look, the law, and at least in Ohio, would say the law doesn't measure, or the instructions would say the law doesn't measure nicely the amount of force necessary to repel the attack. So you don't have to be perfect, but the jury's grappling with this. Is it too imperfect to become self-defense and then result to something like a manslaughter?
And were you in reasonable fear? And the prosecution put on this witness, a mother with a stroller, and she was supposed to say for the prosecution that, like somehow she was afraid but not in fear of her life or something. And she went so far in her testimony, I think it helped the defense.
Probably,
yeah.
Because
she's like, I actually threw myself over my own baby because I thought this guy was going to kill my baby.
Yeah, this guy was crazy. So look, clearly intervention was warranted. The question is, was it too much?
Yeah.
And then on one level, it might hurt Penny that he had training, because then he would be more familiar with what he needed to do not to kill somebody.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'd be arguing if I were the prosecutor.
Yeah. Except for the fact that the training was to put the person unconscious. That was the point of his training.
That was the training, but I understand the other side's going to be saying, no. That kind of choke is different. And look, we shall see.
What a chilling effect
we shall see.
It can have.
My God,
I think the bigger picture here is this.
Yeah.
When you create an unlawfulness environment of just chaos, where people can get away with what they want to get away with, the vigilantes are going to show up, right? This was
like Rittenhouse.
This was the backlash in the 70s, right? And then we had all these movies coming along, like Dirty Harry,
right?
Like Death Wish,
right?
These vigilantes coming out and saying, "Look, enough's enough."
Yeah. Yes.
Like crime is. These bad guys need to go to jail. Like, we were brought up on the bad guys.
Where did Rittenhouse happen? Was that Madison?
That was up in
or was it Minnesota?
Kenosha.
Kenosha.
Yeah.
And so you've got a child, a minor with a rifle.
Yeah,
right?
But his case was better. I think.
No. I'm just saying.
You're back to the bigger picture.
I'm back to the bigger picture that the police, rather than getting control of downtown Kenosha, They've got children guarding a used car lot with a rifle.
That's right. So what's going to happen? Like if you're going to let rioters riot, then the people are going to protect themselves. And when the people start to protect themselves, they're not trained to protect themselves correctly. They don't have the resources to protect themselves.
That's right.
They're going to do whatever they do. And look, Rittenhouse was way over his skis. That kid had no business out there with an AR-15. And look, you can fault him for that, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I think before you fault him for that, at the same time, you need to fault the government response to permitting that crap to happen.
Absolutely.
And they can act like they didn't, but they did.
Right.
Yeah. And not only did they permit it, they encouraged it.
So they know all this crime is happening on the New York subway. And Mayor Eric Adams is himself a transit policeman, retired.
Right.
And he knows this. And he at first defended Daniel Penny and said, this guy's a hero.
Yep.
But Alvin Bragg once he racialized this, which was terribly, like I don't see a racial component to this. But just like George Floyd, they racialized that.
Yep.
And it's ridiculous to do that.
Yep. So just like the 70s, there's going to be a backlash.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to come in and clean up New York. And
I'll tell you this,
happen.
Steve. If you go on vacation in New York and you're brave enough to use the subway system, would you jump into that kind of scenario? I don't think a lot of people will now.
No. And I'm not. Look, you have to understand what it took for a guy like Penny to do this. Like how many times have you sat around watching some crazy lunatic just go off and just sit on your hands? Like we all think that we're going to have the courage under fire to do something or intervene in something like this. And the law doesn't want us to discourage it. So I don't think the law should not discourage this kind of intervention, particularly in the absence of any police presence.
Yeah.
But
this guy could go to Rikers for 20 years.
Think what I would be arguing this on think, ladies and gentlemen, what they are asking you to do.
Correct.
They're asking you to create a scenario where I'm not allowed to intervene and help people, where there's a crazy guy who's out there literally threatening to kill people.
Right.
A woman is lying on top of her baby. A man over here, I'm making this up now, but a man over here is cowered in the corner because there's a lunatic in his face. And they are creating an interpretation that lets that happen. And not only that, puts you in jail if you try to stop it.
And tells the insane person they're probably going to get away with it.
And you're going to get away with it. Yeah. Yeah. So look, it's I hope he's acquitted.
Yeah.
Just because I'm a criminal defense lawyer, if no other reason. Right. Because look, things like this happen. And when even if it's a result you don't like, at least then some change can occur to prevent it from happening again. So anyway, more legal news. The U.S. Supreme Court arguments yesterday, right? In the Tennessee transgender case. What was the case? It's a weird name. Scrutinize.
Yeah, who's the Attorney General of Florida?
Yeah, the Attorney General.
That's his name.
So the case is basically this. Tennessee passes a law.
Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee.
Attorney General.
Yeah. Tennessee passes a law that says you can't employ transgender therapy on kids, right? That's an oversimplification.
Yeah, surgery or these
hormone blockers,
yes,
right?
sir.
Yeah. So Tennessee passes the law. The ACLU and others challenge the law. And it has now gone all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court on issues of equal protection. Equal protection clause basically, in a nutshell, says you can't treat one group of people this way and another group of people this way if they're the same, right? And now it's more nuanced than that we'll get into. It talks about immutable characteristics.
And this is just about children. This is a law about minors.
A law about minors. You can do whatever you want as an adult.
Yes. So let's make that clear.
And look, I'll have some observations on whether an adult wants to get some sort of trans treatment or gender-changing treatment. Whether I should have to pay for that as a taxpayer, that's a whole different game.
Right,
sure.
Right,
yeah. But look, if you're an adult and you want to cut your weenie off, go ahead, have at it. I don't care. But if you're a parent and you want to cut your child's weenie off, now the question is, is there a government interest in that? Here's the bigger picture. First of all, I don't think the court is going to. I think the court is going to uphold the Tennessee law.
I do too.
Based on the questioning, this idea of gender, the irony is thick because Alito's asking the ACLU lawyer, well, doesn't this only apply to immutable characteristics? And you're saying essentially that gender is fluid. So how's that immutable?
Yeah.
You sort of you get lost in the guy couldn't answer it, or the girl, he was a trans guy, but whatever, couldn't answer the question. So I don't think they're going to find that it violates equal protection. But there's a bigger problem I have, and it's this. I generally don't agree with laws like this. Not what the law is trying to do. I totally agree with that. But I wish we didn't, because of the insaneness that we've experienced.
No kidding.
Of sort of watering down.
Oh, dude, yes.
Definitions in our society.
Yes.
Values in our society. Yes. Fundamental, logical, objective truths in our society. Like there's been this push of this sort of postmodernist era to do that. Just to say there is no 2 + 2 doesn't mean 4. It means whatever you think it means.
Yes.
Once you start to do that, you end up with insanity. And the problem is this. I don't like the lever of power the government is exercising by telling parents what they can and can't do with their kids. Yes. I also equally, maybe more so, hate that a parent would even think about doing something like this to their kid. Right. But look, the government has intervened into that family dynamic, the household dynamic. Right. And that scares me a little bit because if they can do it in a way that I agree with, then they can also do it in a way I disagree with.
Sure.
Yeah. Right.
And I guess there's a way they can draft this that says it doesn't violate equal protection without touching whether the governmental power structure is there to do it. And by government, I mean the state or the federal government.
You're so right, Steve. We are now seeing states that try to address things which common sense, like 240 years of American history, is just out the window. Yeah. And things that we all knew were truths, we're now questioning. And we just saw that this week in Ohio, where Governor DeWine signs that bathroom bill. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, who would have thought 50 years ago that men could use the women's room and
look,
vice versa?
I get it that times change, right? We once thought the earth was flat, now it's round. But this is different.
This is different.
These are fundamental human truths, things that we know to be true. And
we had that case in Xenia, Ohio, where the super fat dude was using the women's
at the
YMCA.
Right.
And the judge said, I'm not going to find you guilty because his flab covered.
Right. It's just
dude, he shouldn't have been in the women.
I love the legal argument, by the way. But
and the judge is
not really exposed.
I'm sure the judge is going home too. Like, you got to be kidding me.
You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Why is this in court?
Why is this
our
in
founders
court?
never intended this. They never thought that something like this would have to be litigated. Something like a state government would have to intervene into something like this. So we are we're in crazy territory. I don't think that the court's going to overturn the Tennessee law. I think it will be upheld. I think it will. This too will pass.
Yeah.
And I hope that this is sort of a shake towards reality, and we shall see. At the same time, I think we're all sympathetic with anybody who has any mental health issues or whatever issues. Like, look, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But these are kids, and God bless everybody, I suppose. So look, we don't have time to do full coverage. We've got other stuff we got to get to. I want to remind everybody, check out commonsenseohioshow.com, like, share, and please comment. We like your comments. We love your comments, and we love to respond to your comments. I dare you to take on Norm in a comment. You have unleashed a force upon you that you can possibly imagine. The other thing, we interviewed somebody recently, an author, Mark Patinkin, wrote a book. It's going to come out in a separate interview series, a great book. And I'm going to get you the full title so I don't screw it up. The Holy Land at War, Journey Through Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. Awesome interview. Had a great time talking to him this morning. It's going to drop on its own, which is why we're going to shorten it today.
Yeah.
So this has been Common Sense Ohio, coming at you right from the middle in Ohio, at least until now.